Greetings, one and all, to the most Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8, and I am well aware that no one would actually be interested in this kind of video, let alone how many of this type of video it would take to, well, let's scroll down. By the way, this will be the first video in the playlist that I'll put this in. I was trying earlier with a couple different playlist ideas to try to, but at one, I kind of get distracted, and two, like the one way I tried to, there was one where my neck is itchy video with it's me as a cowboy, but it's, I made separate links to 30 different posts, and for some reason they all just go to the top of the community posts, so I have no idea what I did wrong. Also, apparently somebody or one or two people tried to comment on that, and YouTube won't let me see it. So I don't know why. Like occasionally it'll say I have a comment, but then I can't read the comment. So I don't know. I assume maybe something bad was said and YouTube auto-censored it. I don't know. How long does it take to scroll down? Okay, you see this? You see this number here? Let me check OBS. Make sure if OBS actually is... Okay, my little OBS screen is so tiny and hard to see. Okay, rows per... Is that... I don't know if that's... I'm trying to read this. Okay, so there's a little bit under that number. Okay, so you guys can see this. One of 666. But yeah, this is one out of, though honestly I've thousands and thousands of posts. I mean, I guess I could change how many rows are per page. Of 755, 785. I'm pretty sure YouTube is like... I'm just saying maybe just a little bit I've went a tad excessive. This'll take a minute. It's too bad I'm glad there's like some sort of page system with this, because if I just try to scroll backwards, my computer just can't load that far. It just refuses to. I think it's a memory issue with the computer. So I'm just saying eventually I want to make a video showing all of this, but as it might be noticeable, that will take a very, very long time, because I apparently don't know the meaning of the word moderation. So, one, I understand no one has an interest to see any of these posts at all, let alone thousands of them. And even though the whole point of me trying to do it like this is to make it more accessible to anyone who would be interested, one, I understand full well there's no reason why any of you should be interested in this at all, or any of my videos, or any of my content. But I'm at least going to try to make it easier for anyone who does want to actually see all of my community posts in a somewhat easier to navigate manner. This is my attempt at doing that. it's still going to be a very oh my god. I mean, you guys get the idea. We're at posts of 3,361 of 3,390. So, um, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I want all of you to actually read every community post I've ever made. But I also fully understand how absolutely unreasonable that is, even for anyone who would actually be interested. And one, I understand that there's really a very finite number of people that would ever have the interest to read any of my community posts at all. Let alone the patience or strength of will or just, I don't know, the desire to do something even more boring than watching paint dry. Then again, I mean, you're on my channel, so, I mean, I guess this is par for the course? Oh my god, how many? I know at least know it's not over 9,000, okay? Okay, but this is a bit excessive. I know at one point I considered the idea of just deleting a lot of these posts because, like, okay, I want, like, maybe I could prioritize some posts as more important than other posts. But I don't really like deleting anything. So, I'd rather just do it this way. You know, this is also going to take a really long time for doing them. Oh, we reached the end. Hey guys, we reached the end. Post 1 of when I have first understood or cared about the idea of making a community post for my YouTube channel was April 17th of 2023. So in the span of just barely over 2 years, I have made 5,214 posts. Oh my god. I apologize for nothing. I did make a video once called Apology Video. Oh, by the way, here's this. So this will be the first video in this playlist. And here's the thing. I don't hate women. But I'm just really adverse to the idea of ever being in a relationship with someone with a vagina ever again. Best way to put it is, granted I have a multitude of reasons, but simplest answer is 1, bisexual, makes it easier to make the choice to become gay. And best benefit of being gay is I'm never going to have to lose another family. I'll never have to go through another divorce. I'll never have to be stuck in a fucking government legally binding contract with the fucking government to be stuck with an adulterous, abusive partner. I'll never have to worry about how my child is being treated while I'm at work. I don't regret being married. And the day my son was born was and always will be the happiest day of my life. I tried my best to be the best husband and father I could be. And at least I'm still, no matter what, I'm grateful and thankful for my son. I love him very, very much. And I will always be there for him. I'll always love him. And if he ever wants to see or talk to me, I'll always be there for him. But that being said, between the current circumstances of that, as well as the circumstances of how my divorce went, I never want to fucking go through that again. I don't want to be, like, I tend to be lonely most of my life, but I was never more alone than when I was married. It was fucking awful. I never want to go through that again. It was fucking horrible. I mean, hell, I have a 3-inch scar on my right arm to remember my last Christmas being married to my ex-wife by. I remember having to deal with so many circumstances that were just emotionally painful or just, it was just fucking awful. It was just so fucking bad. I never ever want to go through any of that ever again. I never want to have a situation where my child is basically taken away from me again. I mean, at least he's safe and happy where he is, and that's what matters most to me. He's at least away from his fucking mother. He lives with his grandparents on his mother's side. I pay the child support to them. And they use that money on him. And they're very good, basically, parents to him. They love him more than they did their own children. And what I care about most is he's happy. He's safe. He's healthy. He's alive. I did what I had to keep my child alive. I made the only choice available that would keep my child alive. And like I said, they take good care of him. They take good care of my son. That's what matters most. Yes, I miss him a lot. Yes, I'm emotionally upset about stuff. But I mean, it's not like I even asked them to get a lawyer about that stuff, but they went and got that like within a week of even finding out me and their daughter were divorced and already had the paperwork right in front of us. And I signed it because it was the only way that he was going to live. Because it's just, I mean, I've talked about it so many times in so many of these community posts. Heck, we'll eventually come across them in these fucking videos. Heck, in the first video of this playlist, where, it's, Gene Roddenberry, Willy Wonka, I have 2 links to earlier attempts to try to consolidate some stuff with the community posts. Those would probably be good places for you guys to start. Like after you watch this video and that first video, click those links on the video with Gene Roddenberry and before continuing the rest of this playlist. But it's just, and like I said, I mean, there were happy memories in my marriage. I mean, abusive relationships aren't abusive 100% of the time. And it didn't start that way. Heck, initially at first, even when, the incident where I wound up getting the scar on my arm, I didn't even really see that as abuse at the moment. I was just kind of stuck into like survival mode, like do whatever I have to take to manage collateral damage and just get through things. Like part of me was just kept seeing it like I kept blaming myself for everything. I kept feeling like things will just get better and I have to like stick through it, for the sake of my son. Everything will get better and I have to make sure everything's okay with my son, because heck, if I'm worried about how she's treating my son while I'm at work, then what happens if we get divorced and then she's alone with him all the time? And there were so many incidents where, a lot of just, I mean, as far as with me, the main thing was verbal abuse. And just, I really wasn't sleeping at all at that point. Heck, for a while my life was wake up, take care of my child, go to work, come home, take care of my child, try to be a good husband, try to be a good father, get a few hours of sleep, and repeat process. Heck, I think for a long time, it was back toward the end of Team 4 Star's run. But like I'd probably watch maybe 8 minutes of YouTube a month, which would be like the newest episode of Team 4 Star when it came out, like the Android sagas or something like that. And I really enjoyed watching those. They were a lot of fun. But it's just, I didn't have time to be on YouTube or really play any video games or even get basic sleep. In fact, there was one job for a while there I was working like 70 hours a week at one point. But eventually I had to try to cut that down because I needed to be more home for my child. So, but I was still usually working like 45 to 50 hours a week. But it's just, and especially toward the end when the adultery issue was out in the open. I mean, do you have any idea what it's like having to live with a woman who is fucking another man? And you're just having to deal with that for the sake of, you're still legally married and, you're filing for divorce. And here's the funny thing, about half a year before any of that occurred, or at least that I was, at least at the point where I knew about it, like I said, I have a 3-inch scar on my right arm. It's the last Christmas being married to my ex-wife by. My son was 2.5 years old at that point. He was happy. He was playing with his toys. He was happy. She got very agitated and angry and annoyed at that. So she started screaming and yelling and cussing, picking up his toys, breaking them in her hands, throwing them against the wall, kicking stuff into the wall. Obviously, a small child is going to be upset at that. So he starts crying a bit, walking toward her. She gets more pissed about that. So I step in between them and tell her, ask her, please stop. She then lunges at me and attacks me. She stopped when she saw the blood. Thankfully, it wasn't deep enough to need stitches, but I did wear long sleeves for about 3 months until it wasn't really noticeable. I mean, it's not like anybody would have fucking cared. And at the end of the day, in that kind of situation, it's not like it would have gone in my favor in that situation. I probably still would have been the fucking one arrested for shit. And in that situation, guess what? Then my son's alone with her. That's going to get him hurt. But it's just, do you have any idea how sad and angry it makes you feel to be stuck in a marriage with someone who you have to walk on eggshells with? And even later on when the adultery stuff became out in the open, which that still emotionally upset me quite a bit at that point. Because even at that point I was like, well, at least she wouldn't cheat on me, right? Ha 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 ha. And the funny thing is this. Things in retrospect were a lot worse than I realized. And heck, during the months we were waiting for the divorce to have, because you had to file a divorce, you had to wait a while, and for that time I was still living with her. And also, so it was me, her, and our son. And yeah. But do you have any idea how angry and sad and powerless it makes you feel going through all that shit? And I mean, there's so many men who go through so much worse when it comes to family court or divorce court. At all things considered, I got off pretty lucky, But then again, most of the people that go through much worse usually tend to die. So, but like I said, my main priority was manage collateral damage so that I could make sure I, can make the best case scenario for my son. And at first, it was looking like we were doing shared custody, but then it became very clear, one, she wasn't going to honor that agreement. She was also threatening to run away and disappear with him, at which point I would never see my child ever again. Plus, he'd be alone with her wherever, which means, again, the main reason why I signed the agreement for him to be in the custody of his grandparents was because he was going to die. And even in a shared custody situation where, he'd be with his mother sometimes like that, he was going to die. He was going to be neglected and abused to the point of death. And there was nothing else I could do about it. There was no other way to save him. And people say, oh, you could have fought for custody on that and tried to, no, by the time any of that stuff really would even get to the point, it'd be too late. If the purpose is to save him, I mean, it wouldn't have been in time. And it wasn't worth the risk. Not only was the probability of winning such a situation, even with any sort of solid evidence, very low, but even then, You have to wait for something to happen at that point. And there were other incidents that occurred after the divorce in which, even after, my son was living with his grandparents, that made it very clear that had I not signed that paper, had I not signed my son to be with his grandparents, he would have been dead before his 5th birthday. So I know, while it was a decision that I did and still do feel emotionally upset about, I know it was the right decision, and I have no regrets on it. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I would still sign that agreement. Because I know because I signed that agreement, he's alive. Had I not signed that, he wouldn't have lived. Even doing the shared custody, even trying to fight for custody to get full custody of her, let's be clear, he would have never survived the shared custody agreement with her. He would never have lived to see his 5th birthday. And like I said, he's well taken care of where he is. Granted, I'm a bit agitated that I'm basically estranged from him, and I don't know what sort of things people are telling him about things, because he doesn't really seem to want to see or talk to me anymore. So I hardly ever see him, which that bothers me. But again, he'll get older eventually, and he'll then be able to think about things and, be more older and wiser, and, he can, try to talk to me more, try to, be like, hey, why am I not seeing my dad as much? Because he was coming over and spending the night and the weekends and stuff, until the COVID pandemic. And then initially after the COVID pandemic, he was kind of scared to go anywhere, even the grocery stores. And then even when he started going back to normal with that sort of stuff, he was just hesitant to go anywhere, even over here. And for a while there, I was going over and seeing him over there, taking him to the park and, talking to him, face chat and all that stuff. But it's just, eventually it's gotten to the point he doesn't really want to see or talk to me and doesn't really want him talking on the phone. And I don't understand it. It makes me feel like he doesn't even want a dad. But it's just, I don't understand it. It upsets me. And even when he wound up expressing that on the phone to me, I didn't yell at him. I didn't say anything mean. All I said is, I don't understand. I love you. I want to see and talk to you. So I don't understand, but I love you, and, we can talk anytime you want. So I'm just being patient. And, especially when he's older, he can make the choice to, see and talk to me and all that. And I said I'll always be there for him. I'll always, see and talk to him. I'll always love him and miss him. Hell, for the first 5 years after my divorce, I spent a couple hours every day sitting in his bedroom, talking to his stuffed animals and crying. Hell, a couple of the very first videos I made for this channel, I tried reading the Winnie the Pooh storybooks to the computer, but I sounded nothing like what I would if I was reading the story to him. Because I was reading the story to him, I'd be all smiling and happy, and because, he'd be smiling and happy and reading the books. Heck, last time I went over and physically saw him in person, he was like, Can Daddy stay later? Can Dad come over again tomorrow? Can Daddy come over next week? And he was all super excited and happy about that. And they were like, oh no, we'll be busy next week. Maybe your dad can come see you the week after that. Which I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll any day. I can stay later. I can come tomorrow. I can come next week. The week after that, just let me know any day. I'll be right there for him. And, well, you guys know how that song and dance goes. I'm not in there a couple hours a day anymore. And like I said, for a while there, he was coming over on the weekends. So, the days other than that, I'd be in there for a couple hours. But, on the days that... But then again, even then, me and him would actually be in there playing with toys and stuff. So technically, I'm still in there talking to a stuffed animal. The only difference is, I'm kind of happy and smiling. And I mean kind of, because I'm still, thinking about all the time I missed with him and about how it's only going to be for a day or two that he's there, which, I'm still cherishing that. And I know it sounds really stupid and weebish of me. Like, I know I'm an otaku and everything, but, I share, watching Batman or Dragon Ball Z with him, or Pokemon, or Blue's Clues, or Paw Patrol. Heck, I remember back when he was like 2 years old, when he was real small, when I was still married. I'd give him baths, and after he get him out of the bath, I'd wrap him in a towel and put him in my arms and swing him back and forth and sing, I know it sounds stupid, "Baby burrito in the deep blue sea." And he'd be like, "I'm a burrito." But heck, his first words were, "I love you, Dad. I love you, Daddy." I taught him to walk. I taught him to talk. I played with him every day. I changed his diapers. I fed him, both when he was initially drinking milk bottles, when he was eating the Gerber foods, the crispy wafers, and even actual food. I took him to doctor's appointments. Heck, I remember when I take him to get the tubes put in his ears when he was real young. I was so fucking worried and scared out of my mind over that. And I remember watching him be born. Which I'll say this, there was a lot of blood, and that was definitely a bit, upsetting. I didn't faint or anything, but it wasn't pleasant to see. And I've watched Hellraiser movies and shit, and holy fuck. And granted, it's not like my ex-wife had a C-section or anything. But, and again, at that time, I was also really worried about my, at the time, wife, because, I loved her very much. I can give you two reasons why I married her. The first was because I loved her, because I trusted her, because I thought she'd be a good wife and a good mother. But second, I can also say this. Looking back, if I had not married her, I would have never had a wife. There was literally nobody else on the planet for me. And even then, one, I have no expectation of ever meeting another woman who would actually be interested in dating me, and two, technically, no one's actually ever found me attractive. Every person I've ever had a relationship with has cheated on me, and everyone during the breakup process has been clear to me that they never found me attractive at all, and they had ulterior motives for, wanting to be with me, which that kind of also hurts my feelings. But yeah, as far as the birth thing, they didn't do a C-section thing, it's still vaginal birth, but they did something called an episiotomy, where they basically take a pair of scissors to the bottom of your vagina, or the top of it. It's kind of hard. I'm just saying, yeah, and that was horrifying. That was horrifying. That was really, and of course afterward they had to, stitch her back together and stuff, and that's just. And I'll tell you this, it's just. We didn't have sex for that first month afterward because, doctor's orders. Because, it was actually could have been life-threatening to try to mess with that stuff before fully healed. But even, when we got back to it, which, she was in a big rush for that. And it's not like I wasn't, horny, but it's just, I couldn't stop thinking about all the blood and all of that. And it was just, it's kind of a struggle to get in the mood when you're thinking about stuff that you find terrifying and disgusting. So it's like, at first I was a little bit, I had to try to zone out a little bit to get my mind off of that, because it's just, but back to the birth thing, it's just, it was still amazing to watch my son be born, and I held him, and I did everything I could to be as involved as a father I could every day. Heck, really didn't have time to sleep. I maybe watched 8 minutes of YouTube a month. And of course, this long before having the channel. Heck, I didn't start this channel at all until about a year into the whole COVID pandemic thing. So at that point, I had already basically gone a year of my son not coming over anymore. And honestly, even though I love my son and would want to try to be the best dad in the world for him, honestly, at this point, if he were to like suddenly come back and live with me, I mean, it's not like I'd say no to that. That'd be awesome. That'd be incredible. But at the same time, I'd also be so fucking worried about like what the fuck would I do? Like that it's just I've so much time has passed. And it's just it would be just a shock to my system. I mean, it'd be a good thing. I mean, it certainly sounds incredible, but at the same time, I understand that there's no fucking chance in hell of it ever happening. And even if it did, part of me's like, would he really be better off coming back and living with me? Yes, I miss him. Yes, no matter what, I want to be as involved with him as possible. But he's well taken care of where he is. I worry I wouldn't really be able to take care of him that well as they are. I wouldn't want him wind up, making his life worse or, failing. So, like, it's just a lot of mixed feelings on that, and just, I don't know. But it's like wondering, what you do in some hypothetical situation that would never occur. I mean, the answer would be I would do my best, and I would probably try to work with some people to, parts of my family to, that way, especially if I'm at work a lot, but it's just, I really don't know, what I would do. It would be such a shock to my system. But it's just, what I care about most is he's alive. He's alive. My decisions kept him alive. Hell, I've talked about a lot of things in the community posts. Granted, there's hundreds of things I've mentioned in regards to that. But it's just, there was the one time she left with him and the one guy to go to the guy's dad's house because he was living with his parents. Well, technically his dad and his stepmom. And they had a bunch of cats over there. And I was really upset at my son basically leaving home and my wife betraying me and taking my child away. And like I said, in the long run, I had to, especially with stuff that became apparent in the first week after the divorce, that, he was going to die with a lot of I'll try not to talk about the more upsetting parts, but that one time going over his dad's, her boyfriend's dad, which again, that was a fucking, to be, hey, your wife has a boyfriend while you're, she's in a hurry to want to divorce you so she can marry him, which, by the way, within 1 week of being officially divorced, I had to agree for my son to go to his grandparents in order to keep his mother from killing him. Though, a week after that, the guy she left me for ditched her. And then a week after that, she actually was literally begging and groveling, asking me to take her back. Not just to date, but she was wanting to live with me again, and she was wanting me to remarry her. She was even mentioning we could just go to the courthouse and get remarried on the spot, and I was like, no, no. And then I spent a couple years being harassed by her, with her constantly calling and messaging me, bouncing between begging me to take her back and death threats. Just so many fucking death threats. So many death threats. And threats of just cutting my nuts off, or killing me, or burning my house down, or killing, my mom, or my sister, or... It's like, Jesus Christ. And for a few months, initially, because she didn't have a place to live anymore, because the guy she left me for ditched her, she actually was living with her parents and her son. My son. Our son. Except she was, sleeping on a couch in the living room. And her parents were very clear to me that even though she was over there, she was like, she would never pay attention to our son at all. She would just be on her phone or trying to talk to other guys, and she would just be ignoring him. To where even though he was literally there in the house with her, she would just be ignoring him. And then eventually she moved out and immediately got pregnant. I don't know, here recently, I think some relatives were saying something about she's had a third kid at some point in the past. I'm like, I don't care. And they're like, oh, you should care more. And I'm like, I care plenty. I care about my child. I don't care about her or what other kids she's having. That's none of my business. I don't care. And here's the thing. I have no grudge against her. I have no desire to hurt her or do anything wrong to her whatsoever. I just don't want to ever see or talk to her ever again. I want nothing to do with her. But like I said, for the first couple years after the divorce, she was just fucking harassing me, bouncing back and forth between, trying to beg me to take her back. Even at one point, she was asking if she could just, come over here and live in our son's room and, be like friends. I'm like, no. It's like, fuck. And of course, like I said, so many times, it's just not only the fucking death threats and very, very inappropriate insults over and over again. Just about, oh, needle dick, you're an asshole, you're ugly, on and on and on and on. But then there's just, she'd also be like, who you dating? Who you dating? She's like, who's your new girlfriend? Who's your new girlfriend? I have been alone since my divorce. It has been, I'm not even sure how many years anymore. I have been completely alone since my divorce. Last time I had sex was a month or two before I was officially divorced. Technically, I was still, me and my ex-wife fucked almost all the time while we were married. With the exception of, the month after she gave birth, because, the whole episiotomy thing. And aside from that, there was a couple times, at one point I got admitted to the hospital for 3 days in the ICU, because I had swelling of the brain and swelling of the spinal cord, meningitis and encephalitis. By the way, a fucking needle in your spine and spinal tap, that fucking sucks. That sucks a lot. Also, turns out, while I did not know it at the time, I didn't know this until after the divorce was official, but it was actually my ex-wife's fault that I was even put into that ICU in the first place. Because technically she was already cheating on me with somebody else at that point, and that exposed me to mono, which technically 95% of everyone has that, but it was the first time I had ever been exposed to it. And this is the sort of thing that, if it's your first exposure when you're older, it can be pretty bad for you. I mean, a lot of people technically die from it if it's their first exposure when they're older. Now, of course, her and the person, that other person, which isn't the same person that she left me for later on in the marriage, that being said, they had already been exposed many times back when they were 13 or something. So, heck, I know that makes That sounds bad on my part. The lowest body count any person I've ever slept with had was 9. So the lowest amount of sexual partners anybody I've ever had sex with, that the lowest amount of previous sexual partners they had before their first time fucking me was 9. But hey, I'm ugly as fuck. So, heck, I've been rejected by like over 9,001 people IRL. And for the most part, I really haven't even bothered but fucking trying the past couple years. For a while, I was trying. Heck, there were sometimes like I'd be trying and not even meaning to. Like there's one cute girl at a Applebee's. I started flirting with her a bit. And then she wound up, letting me know that she was married to a woman. She was a lesbian who was married. At which point then, okay, whatever. I was still enjoying the conversation with her. And so me and her talked for another 15 minutes, and I talked to her like, various animes I think her and her wife would like. Either way, I still enjoyed the conversation. But it's just like, But it's like I wasn't even meaning to do it, just like, and it's like, to a large degree, I don't want to ever date anybody with a vagina ever again. After all, one, there is a large issue of society where men aren't cared about. Like when it comes right down to it, is this. If a man and a woman are together and the woman's being abusive to the person, whether it's physically or verbally, is anyone going to give a shit about me or care about me? Or if I have a situation where I have a child to worry about, is anyone going to help me in regard to the child, or are they going to be taking her side? At which point now the child is now, completely at that person's mercy. And here's the thing, I'm not saying like I would hope not at least, air quotes, purposely murder him out of maliciousness. But there were so many issues where there were close calls, or where she, in regards to the way she was about certain things, that it could have very well killed him. And especially there's sometimes where I intervened, like the story earlier, where here's the thing, if I hadn't stepped in, like when she was fucking just doing all that on Christmas, I mean, if I hadn't stepped in between, what would have happened? I mean, she was already fucking screaming, going fucking out of her fucking mind, and you had 2.5-year-olds approaching her, and she's like, what would have happened if I had not stepped in between? And it's just, or just the fact that, the second time, like, technically it took a few months for the whole divorce process to go through. And the funny thing is this, I was still wearing my wedding ring when we were in front of the judge agreeing to the divorce thing, which again, the divorce proceedings went much better for me than with most men. There are so many men out there that get completely screwed in their divorce. I at least was more fortunate than most. It still doesn't mean I wasn't emotionally upset by it. And it still doesn't mean I wasn't upset at being betrayed, or having my family fall apart, or having my son not live with me anymore. But, heck, I was still wearing my wedding ring. She wasn't. She was all giggling and happy, and I was actually struggling to not start crying in the fucking courtroom. I was still... And then, of course, after that, watching her, pack up in a car with some other people, leaving with my son, and she even, says to me, basically, well, I get to choose when you see and talk to your son anymore. It's like, well, I'm going to give him a hug. Like, well, I didn't give you permission to hug your son. It's like, look, what? Well, I'm going to hug him anyway. I don't care what you have to say about that shit. It's like being ridiculous. And it's just, like I said, there was over the months where we were going through the divorce where, she was leaving to go spend time with the guy, taking our son with her. And it's just like I said, for the first week that they did that, they left for about a week. It was at his dad and stepmom's place, 100+ miles away. And then, she's back for a couple weeks. And then, she leaves again. This time, it's still in the same town that, these people are in, which again is 100+ miles from me. But they're in a shitty fucking roach motel. On day 4, she messages me saying that they need some constipation medicine for him and some diapers and some food and stuff for it. I'm like, what about the guy that you're basically going to make his stepfather? Like, is he not able to like do anything that I have to actually, I literally just got off work, working a full shift because I'm still working despite all of this shit going on. And you're wanting me to drive 100 plus miles so I'd have to like go to like a pharmacy type store, pick up some like medicine stuff, and then I need to drive 100 plus miles to you. And I'm like, the only way I'm doing that is if you promise I can actually just take my son home. And during the shifts I'm at with you guys, you're off doing your shit. Our son can just spend some time with one of our parents. So that way somebody can watch our child while I'm at work. And initially she was against it, and she's like, "Oh, you, what kind of father are you? I thought you'd always be there for your son." I'm like, this doesn't extend to the situation where my wife has left me for another man and is in a motel room 100 plus miles away. Like this wasn't part of the fucking wedding vows. And it's just, but I get her to promise it, that I could take my son home. And so I make that trip. And I get there, and my first priority is to get my son outside for a few minutes, to play for a little bit outside. And then I go in and I take care of him. I give him the medicine. I make sure he eats something, make sure he's getting some water and milk and juice. And then, I'm wanting to take him home, and she's like, "No, you can't." And I'm like, "But you promised." And she's like, "Yeah, I lied to you. Why do you keep believing me?" And I'm like, and which again, that's probably part of the reason one dude that she was leaving me for probably eventually wound up, ditching her ass. It's just, it became apparent that, that's going to be you in a bit, man. Like the way she's talking to me, constantly cussing at me, verbally abusing me, saying horrible things, using my own child against me as a hostage and a weapon, to where I have to basically I have to like tiptoe on all this shit and deal with all this disrespect, because it's the only way to like try to at least maybe, I can make sure for shared custody, and I can at least make sure I have some ability to protect my child. That's the main reason why she was even living with me during the time going through divorce, because one, I was trying to push for the most favorable outcome in terms of custody, but also because if I can't trust her how she's treating our child when I'm going to be there every day, to where I, just go to work and come home. And then when I leave home, I just leave home to go to work and come straight back. If I can't trust her in that situation, then a situation where I'm hardly ever there and I don't know who's around my child, like obviously that's a much more dangerous situation. At least where she's still living with me while we're going through divorce, I can be there for my son, and I can try to do everything in my power to be there for him. At least, and people say, "Oh, you should have put your foot down and stuff." Let's be clear. If I had done anything at all, I would have been arrested. My son would have been alone with her. I would have probably got some restraining order by the time I got out of jail. And yeah, what happens in that situation? She's alone with him, and I have no rights to him at all. And we've see how things go after the divorce. The way she was about certain things, he would never survived. At the end of the day, it'd be the equivalent of like, if you go to the police for help, but it's the equivalent of the police basically would have executed my son. And yes, I'm being facetious in terms of, the extremes of saying, oh, the cops would have basically executed my son. But in all intents and purposes, isn't that what would have happened? The cops would have been involved in that situation, at which point my child would have been left alone with her, and I wouldn't have had any ability to have any oversight to try to protect him at all. And at least after the divorce, after a couple of days of the divorce, she didn't really have, well, I'll get to explain that in a second, but main point is it became an issue where her parents got involved right away and were able to actually, make sure he was being looked after. And of course, especially how things were going immediately a few days after the divorce, is like it became clear that if even with shared custody, even if I try to fight for custody on that, he's not going to live. And like I said, I know I made the right decision, because if I had not signed that paper for him to, live with, his grandparents, he would never have lived to see his 5th birthday. Then again, last time I've seen him blow out the candles of his birthday cake was his 3rd birthday. I still have the fucking candles from that. Hell, his bedroom is still set up the exact same way it was back when he lived here. And of course, we lived here for about maybe a year and a half or something before the divorce stuff. So I still live in the same 2-bedroom. I've actually recorded some videos showing his bedroom, because part of me is worried at some point I might not live here anymore, and I at least want a record of his room the way it was, the way it still is for the moment. But I don't know. Then again, I've had a couple notebook pieces of paper where I wrote some stuff on and folded them up and put them in various places of his room. Not for him to find, of course, but they're there, in case I were to die or something. That way I at least, have a letter saying, that I love you and all that, and at least for whoever finds it, they at least, hey, so they know to give his stuffed animals to him. But, yeah, every decision I made was the best one. If I had done anything differently at all, he wouldn't have lived. And like I said, he's happy and safe where he is. He's well taken care of. I mean, he's with his grandparents, and yes, I miss him. But he's alive, he's happy, he's safe. They take really good care of him. Hell, they bought him a fucking PS5 here recently for Christmas. I mean, he has all the games and whatever he wants. So, I mean, he has everything he could ever want or need, I guess. And they help him with school, I guess. And it's just, he has like 3 dogs over there. But he's happy. He's safe. He's healthy. He's alive. He's well taken care of. They love him. They take very, very good care of him. And that's what matters most of all. That he's well taken care of. I just want what's best for him. The second time, during the course of when we were going through the divorce, when she left, like I said, she went to that motel. And like I said, she wouldn't let me take him home, and I tried to fight and argue with her on that shit. But that wasn't an argument I was going to win. So I went home, got like a couple hours of sleep, went back to work, and then after I got off work, she called me and told me I can come down and get him. So I did. I came down and got him, and because at that point, it was weekend and stuff. I had time off work, and wouldn't have to work much the next week either. So, and they spent a couple more days in that hotel. Eventually, I found out why they were so insistent I should come get my son. It wasn't anything benevolent toward me or towards him. It was so they wouldn't get in trouble with the management of the building. Because even though it's a fucking roach motel where, people go to that place to not be anyone's fucking business and usually won't care what's happening in the apartments. I mean, what do you even call the other rooms in a fucking roach motel? Because, it's not an apartment. They don't have, it's literally just a front room with beds in it and a fucking tiny bathroom. What do you fucking call that? It's not even a studio apartment sort of thing. But I don't know what it's fucking called. But here's the thing. During the 5 days my son spent at that fucking motel with them, the only time he saw sunlight was when I tried to take him home the 4th day. He went 5 days, with the exception of that, he didn't get to see sunlight. He basically was just in the fucking motel room with his mom getting raw dogged by a guy in front of him, to where his mother would tell him that they were just playing leapfrog, and then the dude would like play some Resident Evil in front of him, and they'd order some pizza while they're basically treating him like, I mean, as far as I'm aware, they're not like outright abusing him, like, beating him or do anything violent. But at the same time, I feel sick even thinking about all of this. I feel like I want to puke, and I feel very angry. Anyway, like the people at a fucking roach motel usually don't give a shit about anything and won't, complain to management and will stay out of people's business. Anyway, they, like almost all of their neighbors in that place, were complaining to management about noises that they were hearing from the hotel room that my wife and her boyfriend were in. And they didn't know a child was in that room. They thought it was a dog. They went to management and they said, hey, the couple in this room next to us, they have a dog in there. They have an animal in there. And we think they're mistreating it. And it's making a lot of noise. And so, yeah, management was wanting to investigate them about, was complaining about, noise complaints about and concerns about abuse of animals. So they thought my son was a dog, and they thought, even by animal standards, that abuse was occurring and odd noises. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I feel violent thoughts about this, even to this day. So, yeah. Anyway, technically the third and final time she left was about the day before the divorce was official. I was still working third shift at that job I was working at back then, and because actually for the most part of the latter part of my marriage I was working first shift. But then during the course of when I was going through my divorce, I had to switch to third shift, which I really didn't fight against because I was going through a divorce anyway. So, though, about a week before the third time she left with my son, the day before the divorce, there was a day I came home from work. It's so hard to remember. I think it might have actually been before the motel thing. Because I think I was working first shift at that time. And I know I just recently switched to third shift shortly before that. But we were already going through the divorce when I had to make that switch from first shift to third shift, because I was mainly doing first shift because, I felt it made it easier for me to be able to be there for my son, to try to, make sure he was getting everything he needed and to allow him to have a normal sleep schedule. And then I wound up switching to third while we were in the process of going through a divorce. So I think it was before the motel thing. Not sure. I can't remember. My ear itches. Hold on. But I already mentioned this in a community post too. there was a day I was working first shift, and I came home from work, and, my wife was asleep in our room, and, it was evident that she was, talking to other people and stuff, which at that point, we're already going through the divorce proceedings. But it's like, okay, you spent your time in our room talking to the other dude and you're asleep like that. Okay. And then, open my son's room and, you know, she didn't change his diaper the entire day. She just left him locked up in his bedroom the entire fucking day. There was poop fucking everywhere. And it was, of course, all over him, and he looked like he was red and like he had been crying and screaming the whole day to be let out of his room. And he didn't seem to be breathing. I got on my knees next to him, picked up my son, picked up what seemed to be the corpse of my child, who was still not breathing, and he continued to still seem to not be breathing. And I felt very, very upset. And I'll say this. I've tried to live a pacifist as most of my life. Like, I'll fight in self-defense and defense of other people. And I've only ever hurt anyone in self-defense or defense of another. And I have never struck a woman, even in self-defense. Like, even in the issue where I got the 3-inch scar on my right arm, even though I'm physically stronger than my ex-wife, I didn't throw a punch, I didn't hit her, or anything like that. Though honestly, the main thing I felt when I got the 3-inch scar on my arm was just, I was fucking mortified. I mean, it was somebody I thought I could trust. Even though she had had her emotional outbursts and stuff, I still didn't think, she'd be violent, at least like that. Maybe I was largely just in denial of that stuff. Then again, I've had low self-esteem most of my whole life, and heck, when I was in school, I went through a whole lot of bullying and abuse my entire school year, and of course even stuff outside of school, so... And like I said, my initial thought about things were going was like, okay, I can just... It'll get better, or I kept blaming myself, like, oh, maybe I can do more, like something... I can do something better, like I can make things better. It'll get better. And if it is really bad, then just I need to be able to stay here so I can, be there for my son to mitigate any, risks. And but like I said, I mean, just I was going to fucking kill everyone. I was on my knees holding what I thought was the dead body of my son, and I was crying and I was upset. And had he actually been dead, I was going to, air quotes, Minecraft everyone. Because at that point, I didn't care. And I'll be clear, I've at least emotionally gotten more... I don't know if it's control or just dead inside in terms of myself, in terms of just... But I'll say this. If something happened today or in the future where I was told something horrific happened to my son, I wouldn't go off, killing people. I'd still be fucking broken about it, but I wouldn't become violent. But back then, I was going to if if he I was going to kill everyone responsible for that. And don't get me wrong, I was still angry afterward. I was still upset afterward. But like I said, as I was there on my knees holding my son, he opened his eyes. He looked up at me and said, "Daddy, I love you, Daddy." And I was just so relieved. So I stood up, I carried my son to the bathroom, I ran him a bath, I cleaned him up, then I got a bucket of water with some soap and stuff, and I found a spot in the room that was clean. I sat him down, gave him a couple clean toys to play with, and I set about, scrubbing up and cleaning his room while, you know, talking to him about the plot lines of various video games and animes and telling him how much I love him. And like I said, I think it was maybe a month and a half before the divorce was official. But at that point, it was just, yes, I was still angry. I was still really upset. But becoming violent over that wouldn't help him in that situation. I had to make sure to control my emotions. I had to make sure to just deal with how I felt and keep going and I just had to look forward to when we would become officially divorced and I could at least make sure to have shared custody. And even then I was thinking, after a bit, maybe a couple years of shared custody at most, I could have, gotten more custody rights and have my child live with me. And that was the hope. But above all, my biggest goal was just keeping him alive. Just manage the collateral damage. Just ignore how I feel. Just keep going. Try to put on a smile for him. And just do everything I can to keep him alive. And to just endure the fucking hell that my marriage became. And like I said, I'm never getting married ever again. I'm never going to be going through a fucking divorce with somebody again. I'm never going to be stuck in a legally binding contract with an abusive, adulterous person where I have to worry about not only do I have to be stuck in a legally binding contract with someone who I am scared to be around and who is, fucking and all this shit with another guy unprotected trying to get pregnant with his child. Which, by the way, once she was cheating on me, I didn't want to have sex with her anymore. And here's the thing, she still wanted to keep having sex with me. Like, I had to keep rejecting her at that point. And she actually forced herself on me a couple times. And that was... And like I said, she was trying really hard to get pregnant with the other guy's kid. And a few days after the divorce was official and she had to go to her mom and dad's with our son because of situations I will explain momentarily, but her parents came over with her to get some of her stuff that she forgot. She came up to the upstairs bathroom and she took a shit. She took a shit. She also pissed in the toilet and she didn't flush. She took a shit and pissed and took a shit, like a big fucking dump, in the toilet, and she didn't flush. On top of that, there was also a shit ton of period blood. Which, I'll say this, I didn't say anything to the guy that she was fucking. But her parents did. After all, even at that point, her and that guy were starting to make, basically overt threats to her parents about the idea of running away with my son and disappearing with him. Which, again, you could say, oh, you use that against them in terms of police and courts and shit. But, yeah, a fat lot of good it does. If they're fucking gone and you have no idea where the fuck they are. And that eventually got to the point, like, they were constantly keeping an eye on, like, her parents were, like, keeping an eye on it because they were worried that she was just going to fucking run away with him and disappear. And that was the biggest reason why they got that lawyer involved to get that papered word. And here's the thing. It was within a week of them even finding out that we were divorced. And like I said, I agreed to that because it became very clear, especially with things that happened in the future. Like, heck, eventually he needed to see an eye doctor to get some glasses. And it was her mother that actually took him to the doctor. And initially when she mentioned it, like I said, his mother wasn't even paying attention to him. And when she mentioned the idea to him, like, she was like, no, it wouldn't be an issue. Like, and she was even against the idea of even seeing an eye doctor. But, the eye doctor said, yeah, if he didn't go see the eye doctor, he would have just... And he's always going to have eyeglasses his whole life. So... But had they not gone to the doctor, you just would have gone fully blind. So... But even then, not only would he have gone fully blind if he had lived, especially in a kidnapped, disappeared scenario... But again, it's not like she's done the best track record in, taking good care of him. And even then, it's just like, well, like I said, I spent a few years after the divorce being constantly harassed by her, and her basically bouncing back and forth between begging me to take her back and threatening to kill me or do terrible things to me. And also kept like, oh, who are you dating? Who's your new girlfriend? Who's your new girlfriend? Oh, whoever your new girlfriend is, you better not take her around our son. You better ask my permission before you take whoever you're dating around our son. And I'm like, why are you so possessive about who he's around, in regards to me, when you don't even give a fuck about him? You literally only care about him as a way of hurting me. And it's just... But yeah, like I said, that was also really gross, but also, like I said, I mean, she did eventually have a child about a year and a half or two later after that. Technically, like I said, people said she had a third, so that's 3 kids by 3 baby daddies, not counting the guy that she was cheating on me with, or, the other person before that, so. Anyway, looking back, I feel like my son was dead, and that God must have just, resurrected him. So, I'm grateful for that. I didn't have to go kill everyone. It's just... I mean... I don't know if dread is... I don't know if dread is the correct word. But it's just I had a very... very upset, sad feeling that, I think dread is the most, I don't know. just in what it was in that situation with, where I thought he was dead. And I I felt really, really upset. And then, like I said, the day before I got officially divorced, when we went to see the judge to finalize it, she actually purposely kept me awake the entire day. And then, right as I was basically passing out, she had people come over because, the guy she was leaving me for wasn't able to come get her at that time. So there was this guy and his wife and their 3 kids, and the woman was also pregnant with a 4th child, that they were going to go to some shitty apartment and she was going to stay with them during this. And I said, so, and then I woke up a couple hours later for work, and then I went to get dressed for work. I put my pants halfway on, and I just sort of fell over and passed out. And then I woke up, 15 minutes into when I should have been at that work shift. So then I got up, finished getting dressed, and went off to work. And the entire time, I think I worked at that job for maybe like 7 years or something. That was actually the T-800 job, where I was building Terminators for Skynet. If you understand the reference, you do. If not, it's something I allude to in other videos. But in the entire 7 years or some shit I spent working at that job, I never missed a single day unexcused. And that one day, the day before I got divorced, was the only day I was ever late to work. Ever. At least at that job. Heck, at my current job, I have never missed a unexcused day, and I've never been late to work either. I tend to be the kind of person who gets perfect attendance. Heck, at that job when I was just starting, I had one call-off day I was able to use. I used it on a day where it was back when I was working 3rd shift, and it was just, I needed to go to work, and I woke up, but then it's just it turned out that he had an accident in his room. There was some of the stuffed animals, including a giant teddy bear. So I used my day off to take him to a 24/7 laundromat, because even though we have a washer and dryer, his giant stuffed animal bear, which you can see in the videos I made in his bedroom, doesn't fit in that sort of thing. So me and him went to a laundromat, and I washed his giant teddy bear and stuff, and he was actually, because it had the see-through clear window thing, you can see your laundry spinning around. He was actually hugging that dryer washing machine thing, looking at his giant stuffed bear. He was actually hugging. He was trying to hug his stuffed animal through the appliance. But yeah, me and him ate some snacks. I talked to him a bit. We played some of the arcade games there. And it's just... But yeah, back on the divorce day, which is, I don't know, jumping forward a month or something from there. It's kind of hard to know where the timelines of certain shit is anymore. But, fuck. Anyway, she went with my son to those people's apartment, some major city, and they dropped her off for the court date, and they were watching my son by themselves. And then basically me and her, because like I said, I went to work that night, got off work, took a shower, and then went to the court thing, and then we got divorced. And after that, I went and saw my son for a little bit, got him some McDonald's. I gave him a hug, even though she was trying to tell me I'm not allowed to give him a hug anymore. Like, what the fuck? I gave him a hug, tell him I love him very much, and, well, a few days later, him and his mom are over with her parents. And her parents are telling me about how both my ex-wife and my son, they themselves and their clothes reeked of urine. To where, like, my son had basically just been pissing all over himself in a situation. And it's just like, and also my normally picky son, who really, is particular about what he eats, was starving and was, like, eating anything that was put in front of him. He was basically just, like, they hadn't brushed his teeth, bathed him. Like, I'm not sure he ate in days. I think my wife, though thankfully, thank God at that point, ex-wife, even though it only been for a couple days, I think she mentioned that she fed him half a fucking banana over like 3 days. And it's like, what the fuck? And it's just... And like I said, it became very clear that the shared custody thing wasn't going to work. That even if I was able to... And it also became clear she wasn't going to honor it, and she's making threats of just running the fuck away with him. And I understand, yes, a lot of that stuff considered contempt of court, and it can be used against them. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, it still forces a situation where either my son disappears or gets hurt seriously before. And at that point, it just wasn't worth getting him into a situation where he's either disappeared or seriously hurt. I chose to prioritize trying to make sure he was safe. After all, that was the whole reason why I had to deal with all this bullshit in the marriage anyway. None of it was stuff I was okay with, but it was also stuff I had nothing I could do anything about. Had I tried to just, legally prosecute her for that shit when it was happening, at the end of the day, it would throw the issues of custody into... And it's just, yes, it could be used against her to a great degree. But at the end of the day, it was way too huge of a gamble. And even then, through most of this, when I was going through the divorce, I was not expecting it to go this bad. And even then, at each turn, it was like, okay, we got through this major hurdle with this horrible thing. If I can just put up with another couple weeks, we'll be officially divorced. And then from there, maybe I could try to fight for more custody. And, I can at least make sure he's safe and I can be through this shit. And I'll tell you this, I was still trying to save my marriage, as stupid as that sounds. And also the fact that I was trying so hard to save my marriage fucking saved me and my son too. Because here's the thing. Like that morning where we went in front of the judge, before we stepped through that door to see the judge, I turned to her and said, we don't have to get divorced. You can just stop seeing this other guy, get tested for STDs, promise to never do any of this ever again. And we can stay married. We can make things work. And she just laughed in my fucking face. And you know what? That was the best thing I could have possibly said. Now, granted, it was incredibly stupid, but it's sincerely how I thought. After all, I was raised with the idea that you were supposed to do everything you possibly can to try to save your marriage and make it work out. So, I was raised to treat marriage like a sacred thing that you have to try to make work no matter what. Obviously didn't do me any fucking favors, but hey, I was raised very religiously. And don't get me wrong, I still believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but at the same time, while I do believe, as far as I'm concerned, I have more faith in God and more faith in Jesus, and have probably read the Bible more than most preachers. I'll also say this. I base what I think is right and wrong over logic and compassion and kindness and just common sense. But of course, obviously, sometimes there's situations where you have to just trying to figure out like what's the best thing I can do. How do I prioritize my son's safety? And yes, obviously, pretty shitty for him to be with his mother like that. But at the same time, you know, if I didn't be careful as possible at how we were going through the divorce process, then I needed to make sure I was, especially with her still living with me for a while, I needed to make sure I was there for my son, to do everything I could to be as involved. Because as terrifying as all of those situations were, I was still present at times to make sure it didn't get too far. And I was at a point where I can be called to take him from that fucking motel, where I can be, come home to check on him from fucking work. Because it had been a situation where if we just immediately separated while going through the divorce, he would have died before the divorce was finalized. So what I did, I was able to make sure he stayed alive. And again, signing that paper for him to be with grandparents, it was the only way to make sure he was safe from his mother. Like I said, I have no ill will toward her. I have no desire for anything bad to happen to her. I just don't want to ever see or talk to her again, and I don't want her to ever do anything that would harm my child. Though, I also have no intentions of ever telling my son about any of the stuff his mother did, because I think it would cause a lot of psychological harm to him, and I don't want to, give him a psychological issue over that sort of stuff. I feel like it would cause harm to him. And I just want him to grow up normal. But I'm just saying, heck, my dad still feels that it's a sin to basically even kiss a girl without marrying her first. That you have to, you can't even. It's even if you're planning to marry a woman or whatever, you shouldn't be allowed to even sleep next to each other, even if you're not doing anything sexual. It's just heck. I remember being 25 years old at one point, bring over a girl I was going to go on a date with to introduce her to my mom. Brought her inside the house for a couple minutes, during broad daylight, just to introduce her to my mom, for her to see my house. No, I'm not a fucking serial killer or some shit. And my dad was all upset, oh, what would God think about a 25-year-old man going on a date with a 26-year-old woman and bring her over to meet his mother before a date. What? Then again, also that date went horribly, by the way. So that was one date, but it went pretty badly. So, by the way, did not have sex with that person. Heck, I didn't even kiss that person. I didn't, make out or do anything with that person at all. I did, however, go on a date with that person and then drop them off at a place which, yeah, apparently she already was seeing another dude. So, but I didn't know that till after the date. I'm oh, well now that just feels stupid. And I'm getting cheated on by somebody that I haven't even had sex with. That's funny. Ha 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 ha. Fuck. But it's just fuck, But yeah, it was stupid of me to try to save my marriage, but again, it's just, like I said, I believe in God. I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I read the Bible. But at the same time, I'm saying there are certain things that I feel are excessive. How about this? The entire time I was in high school, my dad, technically he's my stepdad. You know, he had been in my life. I think I was like what 7 or 8 years old, and he like married my mom when I was like 11 or 12, and when I was 11 and 12, he like quit drinking. So did mom. But anyway, he he drank too much alcohol. Also, I'm super white. So is my mom. My stepdad is very, very black. I don't have a problem with that. We actually went to an all black church, so like me and my mom were like the only white people there. There was a lot of speaking in tongues, and the church services were pretty long. I'm just saying, given all of that and the changes with that, I feel like the way my dad is about certain things is kind of hypocritical. Also, the fact that while I think it's good that he quit drinking, and I think it's good that he believes in God and is dedicated to it, I also feel like he kind of gave all of whatever money our family had to the church and prioritized the church above his family. And where his entire life simply and completely revolved around the church to the exclusion of all other things. And for the entirety of all 4 years in which I was in high school, he would get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to type out the Bible on a typewriter. A typewriter. I don't even know if most people remember what a typewriter was. Those things are loud. It was kind of annoying to hear that, you know, in the middle of the morning when you're trying to sleep. Also, while I won't go into detail about other discussions I've had with him and stuff, let's just say this. Maybe context clues, if he's the kind of person who's going to get up at 3 in the morning to type out the Bible on a typewriter. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't hate him. I still respect him. I'm just saying certain things have been said that I feel angry, resentful feelings over. So, like I said, I still respect him. I do care about him. Heck, he had a hip surgery at one point, and I actually was worried about him, and I felt bad for him. But at the same time, it's just got some things I feel a bit disagreeable with him on. I think you can understand. But then again, that's normal. I mean, everyone feels that way about their parents to some degree. But I'll have to say, I don't hate him, but I don't really feel like I love him. Whereas my mother, I love my mom very, 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 very much. I have very fond memories of playing Mario 1 and Mario 3 and the original Spyro the Dragon with my mom. My mom cooked a lot, stuff homemade, and I would sit in the kitchen and talk to her when she was cooking. Even back when I was a small child. My mom was very involved and there for me when I was younger. And yes, my mom's not perfect, and she has definitely said and done things that were wrong. And yeah, we haven't saw eye to eye on everything perfectly, but I'll say this. I accept my mom with all of her flaws. And I love my mom very, very, very much. I love my mom. I also love Christmas. But yeah, I love my mom very much. And I think she did a good job as a mother for me. And I hope she lives for a very, very long time. I don't want her to ever die. I think I'd miss her too much. I think I'd feel devastated. So, I hope she's around forever and ever. But yeah, I was talking about my dad and a perhaps slightly overly religious upbringing. I'm just saying this. I do believe in God. I just feel perhaps he's a bit too zealous to the point that, and don't get me wrong, I believe very strongly in God. It's just there are things about him that concern me and insult me, and I feel like I shouldn't say concern again, but I feel like there's another word that's similar to that, but different. I'm sure anybody listening to this that you guys understand what I'm trying to say with that. But I'm just saying this. With my marriage, it was good that I tried to save it. Because I can tell you this. Had I wanted the divorce, had I been okay with it, she would have then immediately changed her mind on it. That would have been the way to stop the divorce from going through. All I would have had to do was been happy about it. If I had actually, because I wanted to save my marriage. I wanted to save my family. I wanted to, I was trying to even talk her out of the divorce because I sincerely wanted to save my marriage. As stupid as that is. But I'll tell you this, had I even been okay with it, or even apathetic at the idea of the divorce, instead of, trying to stop it and argue with her on that, had I been okay with it, she would have purposely, changed her mind and decided to not want to get divorced, just to spite me, just because it's the opposite of what I was wanting to do. So if I had wanted the divorce, she would have instantly decided that she wanted to stay married. At which point, I could have then spent the rest of my life doing everything in my power to try to fight to be allowed to get divorced. And she would have fought me with every fiber of her being, to the point that I would have been legally married to her for the rest of time. And then no matter what lawyer I could have ever hired, no matter what I could have possibly ever done or said, no matter how hard I could have possibly ever begged to be allowed to divorce her, no matter what I could have ever offered her, it would have never been enough, and I would have been stuck being legally married to her for the rest of time. So it's a good thing I was trying to save marriage, because I'll tell you this, I'm really, really happy I'm divorced. And I sure as fuck don't ever, I don't care how much I could possibly ever love or trust anyone else ever in the whole world. I'll tell you this, I'm never getting married ever again. And I'll tell you this, while I did love my wife when I married her, I'll tell you this, I can also look back and say, had I not married her, I would have never met anyone back then. I would have never had a wife and never had a child. And I'll tell you this, back then, I wanted to have a family so badly. And heck, she was the one who initiated in terms of, telling me she liked me in the first place and asking me, saying that she wanted to marry me eventually. And, we weren't even dating at that time. Heck, I wasn't even considering her, an air quotes, option to date, ever. When I initially met her, I just saw her as a person that, okay, you're a friend and I can talk to you sometimes. I didn't view her in any sort of, potential to ever date, let alone marry. But she knew that I very much wanted to eventually have a wife and children, and I cared very much about a family. Also, she eventually did tell me while we were going through the divorce that she was actually talking to one of my ex-girlfriends before saying all that stuff to me. So she purposely talked to my ex so she would know what to say in order to manipulate me. I mean, she certainly knew what to say in order to love bomb and tell me everything I wanted to hear. Namely, the idea that somebody actually thought I was attractive and someone actually cared about me as a person, and that there was the idea of someone I could actually feel safe with and trust, and somebody actually wanted to marry me, and I'd actually have children. Because I was gotten to the point that I had just given up that it was ever even going to be a pot. I wanted to have kids since I was young. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be the best dad in the whole world. And it had gotten to the point that my luck with women was just so fucking terrible that I just gave up. I was like, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to have a wife. I'm never going to have children. And that was fucking heartbreaking. And then I got hit by a fucking truck. Going 75 fucking miles an hour. Fucking giant ass Ford, 350, F450, whatever the fuck it is. I don't remember. I didn't get to read its fucking license plate. It slammed right into the driver's side of the car I was driving. Thankfully, I was the only person in the car. I remember seeing that car afterward in the fucking, junkyard looking at the fucking airbag, and the airbag was more red than white. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying out loud, like, what kind of fucking dumbass design is this? Like, why do you make a design on an airbag? Heck, you got all this red and white. Why not some blue too? We make an American flag. And I'm just like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, why? Why would you design an airbag? And it took a moment to click. To be fair, I did just have a major, head, injury. And was on Vicodin. But it took a second to click, so be mindful of that. That, it took a second to click for me to understand it's a white airbag. It was originally all white. It's more red than white now, as it's red just about everywhere except for a couple splotches of white. It took a moment for it to click on me. It's not a design. It's my blood. It's my blood all over the airbag. But yeah, when I got hit by that truck, I needed to have like a dozen plus staples across the left side of my skull. All my ribs were bruised to the point that if they were bruised anymore, they'd be broken. I couldn't move my left arm. My legs from my waist to my feet were covered in large purple and black bruises that not only curved out and looked like, but also literally when I felt them in my hands, they felt like the texture of a basketball. And even with Vicodin in my system, I was still in pain. Looking at the remnants of the vehicle I was in, like I said, I got fucking T-boned by a giant-ass fucking truck going 75 miles an hour. One of like 200 things that I should have already died from. And as I'm laying in bed on Vicodin, it's a struggle to be able to even sit up. Like, it takes me about a minute to go from laying down to sitting up. And it's difficult to like walk to the bathroom. And the bathroom's not like, far from my bedroom where I was. And it was a 1-story building where it was, just a really small place. And you don't understand how dizzy you feel trying to walk like that, to where like I'd be like holding myself against the wall with my right arm so I don't like fall over because I feel dizzy. And of course my left arm doesn't fucking work. And like I said, I get a phone call, and it's my future ex-wife telling me that she heard what happened. And at that point, I had never considered the possibility of dating her ever. And then she winds up telling me out of the blue that she loves me and that she wants to marry me. And of course, like I said, I've already discussed in full how the rest of that conversation went. And of course, we didn't wind up getting together until about a year later. But I can look back and say, had I not married her, I would have probably never had a wife ever. I would have never had a child. And even with as shitty as everything went, I'm so happy I have my son. Even though I don't hardly see him. Even though there's so many shitty circumstances. Heck, I have so many very happy memories of... I check like what's going on my phone. But I have so many happy memories with him. Heck, I look forward to making more happy memories with him in the future. I'll always be there for him, provided I live, long enough to do so. But as long as I don't die or something, anytime he wants to see or talk to me, I'll always be there for him. I still want to be as involved as father as I can be for him. I loved him with all the world. All my heart. Since the day he was born. Heck, even before he was born, I was reading stories and singing lullabies to the belly that he was in before he was born. I remember clear as day, when I was building his crib and I put a bunch of Mario stickers and stuff around it. And then of course, his toddler bed is still in, his bedroom. I remember putting that together. Heck, put glow-in-the-dark stars on the wall to make constellations and stuff. I show it off in some videos. But I'm very grateful to God that I was married. I mean, I did make some happy memories. Heck, the day I was married, that was a happy day. Even though it eventually went to shit, you know, it eventually did get happy, you know. It's a happy memory to still look back on. Even though things went to shit, and there's still some happy moments. And above all, I have some happy memories with my son, and my son is alive and well and safe and happy and well taken care of. And I'll be there for him anytime he wants or needs me. I'll always be there for him. I'll always love him. But yeah, I just I went to a zoo with him back when he was 2 years old. That's the last time I went to any kind of zoo at all. I've mentioned to my mom a week ago and about a month ago the idea of me, her, my still alive sister, and her daughters. All of us could go to a zoo or something. I suggested sometime like October. At latest, maybe earlier than that, maybe September. At least that way it wouldn't be like the super hot part of summer, but also before, winter. But, because one, I haven't gone to any kind of zoo in a while, and I really like zoos. I think they're really nice. I like them a lot. And I figured I can go with my mom and my sister. I mean, I technically still have one sister. My eldest sister had a aneurysm 15 years ago. So, she died. I felt sad about that. I still do. About 8 years ago, my mom had 3 strokes and an aneurysm. Thank God the first stroke happened in public and she was able to be rushed immediately to, the best hospitals around. They eventually had to do a little bit of brain surgery even. But she was okay. I was able to visit her when she was in the hospital and she was able to talk and hold a conversation okay. Technically she was slurring a tiny bit. But, brain surgery. But 4 months later, she was fully recovered and talking like normal and walking like normal. And she's perfectly fine. Now, granted, they did tell her that she needed to not smoke ever again, and, well, she really couldn't hold off on the nicotine cravings and went back to smoking. And it's 8 years since then, and she still smokes. Which, I mean, I understand stuff's addicting, but it's just, I don't want her to die. And I do worry that the more she smokes, the less time she has. And I will say this. I love my son very much, but I'd say, out of all the humans on the planet, I love my mom most of all. I love and trust my mother more than any other human on the planet. And I'd say my mom means more to me than everyone. I'll do it, Norton. It's an hour and 49. And I only showed you one fucking post out of how many thousands? I mean, I want to try to do this to make it easier for you guys to read these things. And heck, I also have like Google Translate set up. But like, so the idea is, I made a video where I wanted to do the original line too. But the idea is German, English. I'm trying to learn how to speak German. We get to hear how it is in German too.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure misogynation.
Yeah.
Komm mit mir und du wirst in eine Welt der reinen Frauenfeindlichkeit eintauchen.
Click. Oh, by the way, you guys know Overlord Season 5 should come out at some point. That'd be really cool. Heck, Volume 17 Light Novel comes out this summer. And heck, Reincarnated as a Slime is a really good anime.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
Komm mit mir und du wirst in eine Welt der reinen Fantasie eintauchen.
Okay. I would say that there's actually 5 languages, in addition. I would want to learn, I would say, I want to learn German, I also want to learn Japanese, I also want to learn French. I did try to make a video where I tried to sing some French, which is just me butchering the French language, but there's no option to, okay, well, I have no idea how to pronounce that. What was that? Oh yeah, French and Japanese. It's like I'm bi a lot of things. Lingual isn't one of them. But it will be eventually. Bisexual, yes, but lingual, not quite.
Viens avec moi et tu seras dans un monde de pure imagination.
Yay. Yeah, Japanese. Everyone's like, why does your short-term memory suck? I'm sorry, I'm old. Fucking 38. What? Did I? Okay.
私と一緒に来れば純粋な想像の世界へ行けます。
At one point, I was wanting to try to learn Japanese before the German, and then I'm like, I'm going to learn German instead. And I'm like looking at the German books, and my Japanese books are in the corner just staring at me, making silent, angry, gay sounds. But it's like the fucking Japanese books are just like a Stolfo, just sitting there making gay noises, angry gay noises. And then I made the joke about Felix Argyle being the Doomslayer. That IRL me, I look like the DBZ fusion of Felix Argyle and the Doomslayer. I think that'd be a cool mod. Heck, it'd be a cool mod to have the Higurashi stuff, modded in like Shadow of War or something, or Assassin's Creed. Hell, you guys know like people were using those Studio Ghibli filters on lots of pictures? What if there was like the Hidemazawa filter? Wouldn't that be cool? If there was like you're using Hidemazawa filters on popular pictures? I still want the 07th expansion to make another Hidemazawa game. But the idea would be, because some of the posts I make a lot of words, and I understand it's probably kind of blurry and hard to read. So I could put in, because I don't want to reread the stuff I wrote. So I just could put it into Google Translate, put on the English part, so we can actually just narrate all of it. But, yep, first time using Community tab. I was trying to do the coffee talk. Maybe I'll talk about this video, but it's already been a long one. But I'm just saying, 5,214 posts. When you step on a Lego. The face you make when you step on a Lego. Anyway. But yeah, just take a drink of water. Heck, Hold on one moment. Ow, ow, my back. I think I might get some Burger King or something. I don't know. Heck. Then again, like I said, I'm fat. I've never had a six-pack once in my life. Heck, I have a gut. And my arms are not very thick at all. I do not have biceps, and I can't really curl or bench much. And I'm not a fast sprinter. I'm 5'11" and 201 pounds. Heck, I'll tell you this. It was about 2.5 years after I was officially divorced that I decided, hey, I think I might be bisexual. And after giving it more thought, I'm like, you know what? Kind of gay. So I like cock and balls. Then again, I didn't even hear about Astolfo or the red pill or MGTOW people. Like, I didn't hear about any of that stuff. Basically, I wasn't really familiar with the idea of really, air quotes, femboys or any of that sort of stuff, or Astolfo or Felix Argyle. Heck, I don't think I had even, but I don't think it was until like a year or 2 years after I was officially divorced that I even heard of Overlord, the anime, or Reincarnated as a Slime, which are both really awesome. Heck, Assassination Classroom is pretty fucking kick-ass too. But yeah, and I'll say this. I support the red pill community. I support the MGTOWs, but I'm not one of them. Because at the end of the day is this. There is no such thing as a gay or bisexual MGTOW. That's the thing. You can't be gay and be MGTOW. That's how it works. But just because I'm not one of them doesn't mean I don't support them. And I think a lot of the red pill people and MGTOW channels have very good videos that I think a lot of people should see. Heck, I think like Undead Chronic XIV, Raging Golden Eagle, Replicant Fish, Smuggalana, Rev Says Desu, Hero Hey, Asmongold. So, heck, Asmongold's got some really awesome videos in terms of the video games he plays. Like, it's like, you ever watch his play of like Vampire Survivors? It's fucking hilarious. Also, Fleekazoid. He makes some really, really funny videos. But yeah, I will say this. It wasn't until like a couple years after I was officially divorced that I ever first heard of Astolfo or, Red Pill or MGTOW or any of those people. And even then, I was just like, huh? It's like, what is this? But yeah, I would say about 2.5 years after I was officially divorced, I decided I think I might be bisexual. And after that, I'm like, you know what? I actually do like penis. I like futanari. I like futa. I like all sorts of hentai and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I would say this. I think Kaoru Nagisa and Asuka Langley Soryu, however you pronounce it, from Evangelion, are both equally sexy and hot. I remember the soundtrack that came with that, the 10th anniversary thing of that, was, the music's really good. I like the soundtrack to it. I like a lot of anime soundtracks. I like music in general. But I would describe myself as 11 Dragon Ball Z fusions. So here's 11 pairs of a total of 22 anime characters that I think if you combine them, you get my personality. Now, yeah, as far as my physical appearance, definitely some work could be done in terms of losing some fat. But in general, I would say I look like the Dragon Ball Z fusion of Felix Argyle and the Doom Slayer. Perhaps a tiny bit chubby, though. And old. And ugly. But still. Or heck, I look like the Z fusion of Tim Curry and Jack Nicholson. but as a fucking ghoul from the Fallout video games. But yeah, here's 11 Dragon Ball Z fusions of characters. The first is Yusuke Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho and Sailor Moon. So Yusuke Urameshi and Sailor Moon. By the way, take a look at my profile picture. And now think about the concept of what a Dragon Ball Z fusion of Yusuke Urameshi and Sailor Moon would look like. Fusion number 2. Astolfo and Jack Hanma from Baki the Grappler. Astolfo and Jack Hanma. By the way, I think there is an anime character out there that both has the personality and physical appearance of what a fusion of those two people would look like. And that is Ramuda Amamura. Fusion number 3. Krona Gorgon from Soul Eater, the anime, and Vash the Stampede from Trigun. Fusion number 4. Stein from Soul Eater and Nagisa from Assassination Classroom. Fusion number 5. Chip the Cable Guy as played by Jim Carrey, and Ernest as played by Jim Varney. Fusion number 6. Vegeta and the 2003 Guilty Gear XX Testament. Fusion number 7. Goku and Tsukasa from the anime Dot Hack Sign. Fusion number 8. Shinji Ikari from Evangelion and Zelos Metallium from the Slayers anime, the one starring Lena Inverse. Fusion number 9. Licked Bak Rihito from the anime Plunderer, and Takumi Nishijo from Chaos Head Noah. Fusion number 10, which I feel both of these following individuals are pretty spot on with my personality. Do I feel both of these following people, each of them on their own, I feel is a good analog of what my inner monologue would be. First is Date, the main character from the AI The Somnium Files visual novel games, which are sort of a horror suspense with a bit of comedy. And the third game in the series will actually be coming out in about a month. And the second person being Mikan Sumaki from Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair Island. So Date and Mikan Sumaki. Fusion number 11. Mega Man Volnut from Mega Man Legends, and Alucard from Team 4 Stars Helsing Ultimate Abridged. By the way, I still want a Mega Man Legends 3. I say Mega Man Legends is the best Mega Man game ever made, and I want a Mega Man Legends 3. I still want a Brave Fencer Musashi 3, by the way, which I feel Brave Fencer Musashi is the best game ever made for a PS1. Now, other really great PS1 games mainly are like Final Fantasies, like 7, 8, 9. Heck, I like Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, and Final Fantasy 5. I would also say on the PS2, Dot Hack Infection, Shining Force EXA, though the original Shining Force back in the Sega Genesis was pretty kick-ass. Of course, like I said, I have very fond memories of playing Mario 1 and Mario 3 with my mom on the old NES. And of course, I really like the backgrounds and environments of Spyro the Dragon. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do more videos where I try to go through my community post sections. And the idea is I'll try to streamline it, be like quick about it. I apologize for going off at a tangent. I keep saying I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try really, really hard in the future to not go off on tangents. But the idea is eventually I want to go through all of 5,214 posts. So, like, here's a poll. Like, I was like, hey, who do you think's better? Albedo from Overlord or Milim from Reincarnate as the Slime? But, and it's like, the face you make when you step on a Lego. But, yeah, I've already made it super long. But in the future versions of this, I'll just go through the post, click on it, make it into a new tab, show it over here, scroll through it real quick, and then I'll like copy paste it into like the Google Translate thing so it can like read it out loud to you in an AI voice, you know? But yeah, that actually would be a good idea, What if we had like the way the Studio Ghibli filters were going on? What if it became a thing where people were like using, Hanamazawa, Higurashi filters? Or what about like Dark Souls filter? Or imagine any video game or anime series that you like. But yeah, I mean, I would say, what if you could use the Higurashi filter for like the Higurashi anime over real pictures? Like obviously, like imagine right now like this picture of Willy Wonka if it was reimagined in the Studio Ghibli filter. Now imagine it in the Higurashi anime style. Now imagine it in any video game or anime of your choice. Well, I'm in this because, well, this has been a very, very long video. Bye.